And so the agenda for today is fairly loose. We can start with a few announcements. And if it's a small group, we can do introductions more easily. So my name is Mike Fogel. I'm the president of PAATA. And I see Michelle Dean is on. She is the president-elect. And let's see, we have a few of our student reps on, Katie Ionescu and Ashley Caldero. And so it's great to be a community during these challenging times. So let me begin with just a few announcements, not as involved as last time since we met just 3 weeks ago. PAATA just held a board meeting yesterday, trying to continue to do what work we can on to just pursue our mission and our vision for what we're trying to achieve for Pennsylvania art therapy. And so one thing is just the licensure effort is still paused for now, while the stay-at-home effort and this state of emergency in Pennsylvania is on. And we are planning a few events, and we believe that even the events in the fall are all going to be online. They're all going to be virtual. We think we're just going to not try to create something that's live that we then have to recant and change. And so for all safety in every way, we're going to do online things. First, there's going to be a program for art therapy students. This is in 2 weeks from today, actually, on May 31st. We really want to care for and invest in all the students who are the future of our profession. And so we're going to be doing it's a panel presentation with 5 art therapists at all different levels of clinical experience, who are going to be talking a little bit about the transition to professionalism, to professional life, A. We also had our student reps go back to their cohort in each of their respective programs and ask for questions. So we already solicited questions, and we have a nice lineup of questions that we're going to answer right up front. And then the program will open up to question and answer session that will take the remainder of the time. So that'll be 2 hours from 10 to noon on May 31st, Sunday, May 31st. So we have that. Is the nearest event. Then in June, we are going to be holding, this is more for the board to reflect and look at the future. As a nonprofit, we have a 5-year business plan, and that actually ended in 2019. So it'll be important for us to revisit that. So just behind the scenes, we're going to be reviewing where we've been as a board, what the old goals were, and creating new goals, updating the vision, probably updating the bylaws to reflect contemporary times more. And so we're going to hold a few just board retreats in service of our profession, and that'll be held in June, we believe. Then when we get farther into the fall, later in the fall, we're going to have in October, we're going to have a combination CE event with the topic to be announced later. And that'll be combined with the open board meeting. So there's a membership meeting every year that's required in our bylaws. And the last several years, we've been combining that with a CE event as well as a give back to the community. And so that's a time for the community, the membership, to vote on members, on issues at hand, to bring up issues that they're concerned about, that they'd like to see the board work on. Also, voting on new board members. That's another thing that I could mention today in terms of announcements. As we're heading towards the middle of this year, that means that many members of this board will be ending their terms and rolling off the board this December. And so that means there's going to be some vacancies. And one of the reasons why we've been able to accomplish so much as a board is because we've had a very fully staffed board. And it's really fun. It's exciting to be a part of a group that's working on goal-directed activities in the interest of our beloved profession. And thank you. And I'll correct that. And anyway, so you should be looking out for announcements and calls for nominations. And this is meaningful work. And so we'd love for anyone who's hearing this now and to also just continue to listen for opportunities. And if you would like to be a part of planning for the future, we are recruiting people from all around the state to represent your area. Just continuing our goal to be the Pennsylvania Art Therapy Association and to reach just every corner of the state in terms of representation and voice. And so that's very important to us and part of our current vision. So, please consider that. It is a volunteer board, but anyone who does it seems to find it meaningful. I want to say that I want to correct one thing. Thank you, Michelle. That membership does not vote on new members, only nominate as part of our bylaws. So, but membership nominates the potential board members. So that was me misspeaking.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, can I interject something here? Yeah. So I see a lot of faces that look familiar to me. Some of you are students, some of you are professionals. And I want you to know that you can nominate yourself as well as other colleagues to serve on the board. Some of you that may have are still students could certainly volunteer or talk with your directors about becoming the student rep. But students can also hold other roles as well. If there's a need, or you can serve on subcommittees. And just in my own experience, I started on the board when I was a student. I was the chairperson or co-chairperson of the newsletter, and I have to say that it was a really rewarding experience. It gave me experience in terms of governance, but it also gave me lifelong connections with other people in the profession with whom I'm still close with and still talk to. So it's a really lovely way to get involved, meet new people, network, get the inside scoop on jobs or different locations or what's available out there. And then also, be a part of the change that you want to see with our organization. So that's my 2 cents there. So do think about nominating yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, Michelle, would you add anything to the announcements and the list of upcoming events?
No, I think you got everything. Sounds good. We're still doing the best that we can in providing value for our membership and providing continuing education credits. And then also keeping you all involved in our members meeting that we will do once a year. And this year last year we did it in December. This year we decided to move it up a little bit so it wasn't so close to the end of the year and the holidays and everything else. So I do hope that you're a part of that and you can share in our process. There will be more information sent out in terms of things that you'd like to see spoken about. If there are any changes to our bylaws, those will be voted on by our membership during that meeting. That also will be announced in advance. And then we're going to find a way to host that and do votes online. So it'll be a new format, but it's the same, with a new platform, but same format, I should say.
Yeah. And one final announcement before we open it up to talk about current events is we have a position on the board that's called Jobs Research. And Tina Montagna-Tate and Rebecca Berna are the 2 co-chairs of that. And they worked through the winter on, you may have received a questionnaire, a job survey, a salary survey for Pennsylvania art therapists. And they did really an amazing job. We saw its big reveal just this week, and it's going to be released to members. It's a benefit of membership, and so please, absolutely, if you're not a member, join, get access to that. That will be a part of the student presentation. We're going to share a lot of the findings for the students, certain key pieces, including what's the average salary of a Pennsylvania art therapist. what's it look like in different parts of the state, and on and on. So there's a lot of really valuable data that can help people with salary negotiation and job search, considering private practice, thinking about finding an ATR supervisor, private practice work. So a lot of value in terms of the business end of art therapy. And so thank you so much to Tina and Rebecca for putting that together. And you will be seeing notices about that released.
Yeah, it's a great document to leverage new salaries to be able to look at it, and they've broken it down into different geographical areas throughout Pennsylvania. So you can see what other people are making in different areas of the state, and use it to bring to prospective employers to let them know that this is the going rate in our area based on our survey. So we'll do that again next year, and we'll be able to continue to look at the data. It's really helpful if we have as many people participate in it. It gives us a more accurate idea as to what's going on. But it also gives you some information about not only prices you should be setting, but prices that other people are setting for supervision or for private practice fees, things of that sort.
Absolutely. Okay. And with that, I think that ends really the planned announcements. And so now we'd love to shift gears and really open it up to the community for a town hall discussion about any aspect of your current experience, how have things changed for you if you participated 3 weeks ago, even if you didn't participate 3 weeks ago, how are you doing in the coronavirus era right now with all the adjustments that we've had to make personally and professionally? If anyone has a question, you can feel free to type it in chat, and I can read it to the community if you have a very specific question about any support you're looking for or questions.
I have a topic I'd like to bring up. I don't really have any questions or answers for it, but I just feel like I was listening to Governor Cuomo this morning, and there's just been so much talk about how much support is going to be needed, the tremendous amount of mental strain this is putting on our entire country, and professionals. And I just keep trying to think of ways for us to come together as art therapists and really promote our practice, but also create a very solid structure and presence in that movement, or in that recovery process.
So in what you're saying, are you partly hoping to generate some conversation about ways to promote or advertise art therapy during this time? I heard that as one part of your question. I also heard just supporting one another because of the strain that is putting on everyone. Where are people living in this pandemic as well as treating clients?
I think all of it. And I keep thinking back to the last presentation. I guess it was still Devada at the time, and I cannot remember the art therapist's name, but she was up at Sandy Hook and had created that program. And I just keep thinking that maybe there's a way for us to create something together in the state to maybe a centralized place that we are able to advertise together as Pennsylvania art therapists, and then maybe people can call and a group of therapists will go to their location or something. I'm just brainstorming as I'm saying it, but just some way to come together, as art therapists looking to be licensed, to really make our presence known as a unit.
Yeah. What do people think? Any feedback?
Was responding to Cynthia's message in the chat box that went to everyone, and I think I sent it to just to Mike privately by mistake, so apologize about that.
Right now it looks like to everyone.
Yeah, no, I just sent it again. But yeah, so I did want to respond to Kim's comment.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. I wondered if there would be an opportunity for people to work together on a task force as a part of the Pennsylvania Art Therapy Association to begin to identify a plan of action, and also some important research that's being put out there in terms of using art to help not only health professionals but also the public deal with these specific issues or stressors related to the fallout of the COVID-19. I know that I've been working with a group of people in China who are actively doing research, and they're incorporating dance movement and also art therapy into the work that they're doing with frontline doctors who have been working on the COVID units, who have been experiencing stress like depression, isolation, and they identified several different factors, and they've done a bunch of they're going to do pre and post studies related to integrating art and movement into the trauma response. So if that's something that you're interested in, we could perhaps form a task force to begin to talk about what that could look like in terms of branding or marketing or public awareness, those types of things related to what's significant about the stressors related to this pandemic, frontline workers, and then how art therapy would be well suited.
I think that sounds gret.
Yeah.
So would you like to be a part of that task force, Kim?
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else?
You and me, Michelle.
Okay.
Yeah, and
students do that?
Yes, students could do that.
You can be part of the task force as a student?
Yeah. You could be a part of like putting together materials or research or whatever it is that we're doing. And we can begin to, as we meet as a task force, define what that's going to look like and how we would get that message out. Certainly we could also work in conjunction with PAATA and the work that they're doing. I know they just had a couple of webinars they put out recently. So that would be something that we could do, but certainly we could make it more Pennsylvania unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're partly thinking about doing it, for Pennsylvanians, obviously as a benefit to clients in the community, but also to raise awareness about art therapy, I think doing something that is that's clinical, that is minimally clinical in some way, so not just research oriented, but also, sort of like a response team. You mentioned, a team maybe going to an area. Seems like it's tricky because of social distancing and all that entails, but so many therapists have converted to mental health, to telehealth. Certainly I know my entire team of associates in my private practice have. We could think about, some kind of a program that could be delivered by this team, either as a group for a group or fanning out to, to your different, constituent areas, but doing virtual things built around art therapy and putting together a program that might sort of be related to what we learned from that presentation two years ago. Last year? Was that last year? 2 years ago, about the trauma response team in Connecticut.
There's a trauma response group that I'm a part of, or at least I still got their emails, and they're putting together, I I guess, almost like Zoom sessions for first responders, and they have counselors as part of it. I inquired if art therapy could be a part of it, and they never got back to me. So I figure maybe we could, in a sense, do something where it's just art therapy that comes together and maybe provides groups for first responders, and almost like an open studio, I guess. And maybe we take, one person leads one day, so it's not like a huge burden on everybody.
Yeah. Everyone, a few people typed in, I may be interested pending the amount of time required, from Marie, Lori, same. Yun Lee, I'm also interested in the task force. So Sheila, so that's great. So I'm gonna write your names down. I need to not facilitate for a second so I can focus. Actually, I'll do this at the end.
Do you have a report at the end, Mike, that you would get the transcripts for people who do the chat, so then you don't have to take notes?
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm not.
There was a I don't know if anybody was on the PAATA call, or that they did a kind of a panel discussion earlier this week, and one of the members works in, I think, one of the New York hospitals, Presbyterian maybe. And she was saying how she is shamelessly representing art therapy, and she's being called in to do work with first line doctors and nurses. So that might be a good resource for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Yeah, those webinars are free for members. I think the one they just did this week, they said it was going to take about a week or so to get it, whatever they do, to get it up into their ICE programs. And then they had done one, was it like a week or more ago? But those are available in the ICE program if you're a member. I think you can still watch them, but there's a fee if you're a non-member.
Yeah.
I have a question. Like, I don't know if it's possible, like you can do like in a safe way, like drop off if they don't have like any kind of art supplies, like drop them off either for like, I don't know, like children, or like she was talking like health professionals, or somewhere like somewhere like could be like a drop off, so they can have like materials to work with while they get the telehealth like conferences, like whatever, and on Zoom and stuff, that they can do kind of like what we did for class.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely could be part of a job of somebody on the task force, is to, how do you get supplies to, people who need them, who don't have them already. I know PAATA has offered to put together some supplies to send to clients through donations, through vendors. And then we could also, look at, how those would be disseminated to people in need, or how would maybe there would be people who would be willing to donate their supplies, and we could get, again, more vendors donating supplies to those in need. And again, I think that would be a job or work to follow up on with our task force.
So we'd have like separate meetings and stuff for that, to put all that together.
Yes, so we could certainly head up our own meeting with the task force. We could do a call. So certainly the people on this call today could be part of our core. And then as we decide how we want to proceed, or getting enough information, we can think about the different parts of what we would like to execute, or how that would be, and then people would break up into their subcommittees or their specialized work to do, and then we would come back together as a task force. It's I guess I call them a task force because it's probably a limited time, hopefully, and that it has a particular purpose.
Maybe as they open more non-essential businesses, like say like, or even the art shops or something, maybe reaching out to the owners or the store, like the people there, and see if they would donate materials for the community for art therapy purposes.
Yeah, definitely. That could definitely be a subgroup within our task force to explore, for sure.
We could also partner with various nonprofits. I know there's one, at least in our area, that's called Cradles to Crayons. I don't know if it's statewide or national, or it's just in the Philadelphia area, but they began by taking, donations of art materials and then other childhood necessity items, and then disseminating them and passing them out to people of need. But I think that that would be a great, a great partnership there to meet both of our goals.
I guess I've never quite figured out what I want to be when I grew up. Besides being an ATR, I'm also a rostered artist with the PA Council on the Arts, which curiously pays a lot better than being an art therapist with much less paperwork. And in some ways, I love the natural settings because I feel like you can do a lot of the same work, but in a different way. But recently, they had, I think Center Stage through State College had been reaching out to a lot of the artists to do some kind of work for healthcare providers during this time, which I thought, I wanted a lot more specifics in terms of, and via Zoom too, but in terms of exactly the goals and the population and such. And, I kind of have, a little bit of both skills, but I was surprised that, especially given the nature of what they were asking for, they weren't reaching out to the art therapy community, because there's some great rostered artists, but particularly to deal with some of the type of things they wanted to provide, particularly for people who are in the front lines dealing with, the current COVID situation. I thought most of the artists I know don't have those kind of skills. They have some other great ones, so kind of interesting to see. In fact, I have a couple more meetings scheduled with them, which first I just had a lot more questions, so I'm hoping to get more info. And maybe it's a matter of they're not aware of, here's what else could be offered, beyond just, something that, here's some nice way to cope. I don't want to minimize coping, but, that there's a lot of things involved right now. So.
One of the tasks of the task force would be to create a real focus. I think if we try to do too many things, then, it gets diluted, it gets confusing. So, saying like, or even if there are two groups within the task force, and one is all about healthcare, supporting those healthcare workers that are on the front lines, and there's another one that's about art-based support groups for Pennsylvanians, consumers, so to speak, as they say. We just want to get clear on that. And then I wonder if I think it would be neat if there were some also like data collection, even if it's a questionnaire beginning and ending about, symptoms, stress levels, and then how do you feel at the end of whatever program, whatever course they go through, whether it's single session or ongoing, and then being able to, find out, what people's responses are, and if they're really promising, then promoting those as well. Look, here are the benefits of art therapy as reported by the actual participants. What else? This is really neat, by the way, and what a different discussion than 3 weeks ago, where we were sort of in it. I think everyone was still reeling and just trying to sort it out, and it was very much support. And this session so far, we've shifted into a bit of a generative kind of a thing, right? Like, let's try to do something that cares for others, which I think also can lift our spirits, right?
I didn't even know about the last one. I don't know if Michelle, you put it on the page, or I didn't see it. I was too much in my head a while ago anyway to think about anything, but now I feel like it's shifted, and like you said, and I'm ready to get out of my head and help other people with dealing with this pandemic. I have a question too. Like, I don't know if it would come in handy, but the video that you posted, or somebody posted on our therapy page with Chris and the helping out the Red Cross, that inspired me to apply to them recently, like apply to help them out for volunteer position, more like remotely, because I am immune compromised as well. But But yeah, I spoke to a representative, and apparently they have some kind of art therapy thing going on, helping people through the Red Cross. So I don't know if it's possible for the organization to partner with the Red Cross with that, and we can probably get supplies from them as well.
Well,
Yeah, hold on. That's definitely a possibility. I was looking for the link to share with all. I think that was just on our, it's on our art therapy page at Cedar Crest College. It's one of our students who's volunteering for the American Red Cross with trying to do food distribution for people who are in need. I'll see if I can post it here. But yeah, so again, I think that would be a great topic to follow up with in terms of our task force and figuring out, where we want to, where we want to put our energies and how we want to move forward. I know I'm actually looking at our site a little bit here. I also, through some other folks that work at Lankenau, I am collecting those hearts. I don't know if you saw that. I put that both on our PAATA page and also in a couple other places. There's somebody who is working at Lankenau Hospital, and let me find the link real quick and I can tell you more about it.
That's in the Philadelphia area. Yeah,
Lankenau is in the Philadelphia area, but they are doing this in other hospitals as well. It's an art project where I can't find the details of it right now, but you're making pairs of hearts, either knitted, crocheted, or sewn. And then you put them in a plastic bag together with the date on it that you sealed it. And then I'm collecting them so you can mail them to me, and then I'm gonna get them to the person who I know who works at Lankenau. And the idea behind it is that because oftentimes loved ones can't be with the person who is in ICU, they give them one heart and then the family member gets the other heart. So the hearts are to be identical or look very close. And so it's a way of, through art feeling connected, even if they can't be present together.
Michelle, when do you want them by?
I'm taking them on a rolling basis. So as soon as you can get them to me, that's great. I was thinking that I could arrange this like maybe once a month. I could get them over to my contact person. So if you have them and you want to send them to me, that would be great. You could just reach out and I'll send you my mailing address.
Michelle, is it only, that's why I hadn't done that, is it only like fabric art?
Yes, I think so, because it's meant to be sort of soft and pliable. I mean, it doesn't have to require great skill in your, seamstress abilities.
I have no seamstress ability at all. I do I call it a Frankenstein stitch. It doesn't exist. That's what I call it, because I don't know how to sew at all.
Yeah, I don't, that's just what I'm, that was just what I was told. So.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if there were other mediums that you could do, but if it's only that, that's why I haven't done that.
And the hearts are meant to be just the size of your palm, so not very large.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll YouTube it or something.
Something kind of related that I think goes even deeper into the difficulty of someone being in isolation and separated from family is when that happens to someone who has a serious mental health diagnosis. I recently, my older sister, who has both epilepsy and schizophrenia, had a serious fall and brain bleed and was in ICU for 2 months in trauma, and then finally sent home and dealing with short-term memory and other issues, but healthy otherwise. But it was kind of like 51st states. But suddenly one day couldn't stand or walk, so ended up in the ER, admitted with no symptoms of cough, fever, or anything, which is bizarre because I know people with symptoms who couldn't get a test, and was put in isolation for 3 days awaiting COVID results. And the really difficult part was not only her state of mind and already paranoid, but and memory loss. So even after you explain the next day, you have to do it again. They took all the phones out of the patient rooms in isolation. So for 3 days, I'm like, what have you even told her, let alone to at least be able to speak to her during that time, you know, even though I physically, you know, wasn't even allowed in the ER, but like having something to hold on to in your hand. And literally, you know, even in the psych ward, you're not allowed a greeting card or newspaper, at least in my hometown, which is pretty awful to be that disconnected from the world in so many ways. But, you know, the stress of going through that process, even for me, you know, 3 sleepless nights waiting for the results, which turned out to be negative. But for someone inpatient, that's hard enough, let alone for someone who might have serious mental health issues. Like, the hospital should have a little more understanding why at least a portable phone for a brief time couldn't, you know, be, you know, provided or something, but also, you know, something even tangible to hold on to, because, you know, staff is overwhelmed through no fault of their own, just dealing with, you know, the whole situation, so isn't able to even attend to patients in the way they normally can. So you're often sitting alone in a room for a very long time, even if you're not on a ventilator, you know, and I think just something about having something, be it a little hard or even something else that's a source of comfort and connection could be a really significant thing, particularly for members of the mental health community.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I wanted to share something I learned just the other day. I was reading a CDC put out various guidelines for summer programs opening, and they're talking about one whole chapter. There's a 6-page chapter all having to do with cleaning supplies, cleaning equipment that you use with clients, with people that you work with if a business opens. And they, you know, talked about one thing was porous objects, porous materials, so fabric, felt. If you have people that sit on sofas or chairs that are fabric, those are really hard to clean and sanitize. And so they're actually discouraging their use, believe it or not, and encouraging people to adhere more to, you know, hard surface type things that are easier to sanitize. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I think, one consideration that we're going to have to pay attention to. And I can actually forward that chapter to all of our membership. I just got it, I think, on Friday. I read it voraciously.
Right. That's a good point. I think that's part of why they're wanting people to keep them, to date them in the bags. They don't take them out for at least 3 days. And so that was the point behind them. They may do mm-hmm. other kinds of disinfecting to them, but, and my guess is that they don't come, you know, they don't get returned to family members if something were to happen.
They said it lasts 48 hours on surfaces, right?
It depends on the surface, but I think they're at least 72.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. Yeah. In this chapter I read, they said, so let's say if you use stuffed animals, then whatever that stuffed animal needs to go away. So no client can then use it for like 3 days afterwards, and then you can put it back in a rotation.
Okay.
Is the guideline that I read. So
there's a really good site called Dear Pandemic, and I endorse it because science brain must skip a generation, but it's run by, among several other epidemiologists and researchers, my cousin, Malia Jones. And not only do they really cross-reference articles that outside, they take questions repeatedly on real practical matters, you know, like even going to the gym or other things like that. And occasionally they have, about a couple times a month, they even have a live, it's called Nerdy Science Girl Talk, where they just field questions. But they have some, and they're very responsive to post a question and, you know, and not just here's an answer, but here's an answer. We'll get back to you with a variety of research that we've all reviewed and kind of, and it's nice too, because it's a non-political site. So there's no other agenda than here's what we as science people know. And even within themselves, sometimes they go, we're not sure about this. Here's what one says and here's what the other said. So it feels like a good place that you can just ask questions without having to feel like you're being attacked or somebody's pushing an agenda on you. But I really appreciate the real practical questions too. Some of them are way over my head in terms of the science, but I was surprised because I didn't even know my cousin was an epidemiologist. I saw a woman on Dr. Phil, and I'm like, oh, that was my cousin's little girl's name. And here it was her on Dr. Phil, and she was on the cover of USA Today the same week. And I was like, oh, how cool, because it's neat. Her mom died really young, and I just remember she had this Hawaiian-sounding name because that's where her mom lived. So it's really neat to see that and get feedback from her, and even be able to ask her some off-the-record questions. You know, how do you deal with all the conspiracy theories and the misinformation? And she said, you just blast people with real information. You don't argue. You just keep putting real information out there and be really honest, even when you get it wrong or when, you know, things change and all, and be open to taking all the questions, you know, regardless of, you know, where they're coming from. So, and it's nice to see women in science working together to do this, and even her talking about as a mom and all struggling with, you know, dealing with teaching her own kids at home and living in Wisconsin, and you know, the situation out there, and also it's a really nice site.
Oh, great.
Susan, can you type that into our chat box for everyone? And
also, on her personal Facebook page, she has stuff, but the Dear Pandemic is the group of women researchers that really do it. So it's kind of much broader, and they get back quicker than she does personally to just.
Cool. Yeah. So far today, we've really been talking about ways to be active, to take a more active role in helping and reaching out, whether it's through the HEART program, people in medical hospitals, or creating a task force, right, to address mental health needs through art therapy in Pennsylvania during the coronavirus. Any other thoughts, just creative thoughts or programming thoughts that you've been tossing around? Or self-preservation thoughts?
I've been tossing around starting up a nonprofit organization, but I'm not sure how that works legally in terms of liability and insurance and all that good stuff, the business aspect of the nonprofit. So that's, you know, yes, that's what I'm tossing around. I'm in the very beginning part of brainstorming.
I know a decent amount about that. I could tell you about that if people are interested as a group online, or I could have an offline conversation with Marie another time.
That'd be lovely. Okay. I'd love that.
Yeah. All right. I will talk to you offline.
Cool.
I have an idea. I don't know if the organization has done anything like that yet during the pandemic, but has it been like talked about or tossed around somehow? Maybe doing either via Zoom or Facebook Live, like a workshop for the public, you know, and it would also educate them on like what art therapy is, and that there's a local organization, like things they can do at home to keep themselves sane, and like with the supplies they have, or like, you know, they can get all DIY MacGyver about like some stuff that they already have handy at home if they don't have access to it or can't get to other materials, things that they can do, kind of like an educational kind of like workshop online, to help the public, and again to like educate them on like how art therapy can help them.
I think that could be one of the outcomes of the task force, or one of the almost services that they provide. You know, I think if you are thinking about helping with, in that way, creating that kind of a thing, that if every art therapist, you know, if it went out over social media and every art therapist, you know, all 650 of us in the state forwarded it across your social media networks, it could reach a lot of people, you know.
I feel like I've been like turning into my grandmother during this pandemic and saying things like make do, and you know, not just clicking Amazon or running to the store, or, you know, even if there's no rice paper in the land to be found, even if, you know, I wanted to invest the money right now while I'm trying to watch my pennies. But one of the projects I had done the past 2 years more for mental health awareness was this thing called We Don't Get Well cards, which was just a little very personal piece I wrote about the differences. But then I began to, in fact, I'm a very bad Zoom person because I'm always multitasking, but painting these cards and giving them away. And, you know, at first was trying to do that with permission through our local, you know, CSP team or the drop-in center stuff. And then I was like, I'm just doing it randomly, like in the streets. And when you meet someone, and instead of giving a lecture, you know, like, here's a free card, and, you know, give it to someone, you know, who might be struggling, or save it for, you know, sometime. And, you know, some people that conversation goes further. Sometimes that's enough, but I include the story. But I think I did about 200 and some last year. And the sane way would be to print them, but being an artist, I'm like, no, I want them imperfect and each one different in the same hands that held them. Plus it's also, you know, I'm sure as art therapists, you know, sometimes we don't practice what we preach, or to find time to make your own art, where, you know, I can sit with a cup of coffee and at least get a little art calisthenics in a couple minutes in the morning, and then turn that into something that, you know, is as simple as a greeting card. And I like the idea that each was original, because there's a lot of people that can't afford to buy original art, maybe ever. And the idea that art is not always accessible to people. So even if you send a card, you know, some people save them and frame them. But this year I was sort of, you know, stuck at home, and I was warmed up on quarantine long before anyone, because I've been in and out of the hospital this year with pancreatitis and surgery and all kind of things. So I was good at hunkering. But I started doing some art again, and then I thought, oh, you know, I was literally getting scraps of rice paper from friends and then doing cards. And then suddenly, I think Gretchen Miller, somebody had the artist card thing. So I'm like, oh, they've shrunk even more, but I have enough scraps left. And I thought, but I was talking to the Pennsylvania Mental Health Consumer Association, who are trying to do some virtual things right now since they can't do the live things. And I thought, oh, what a perfect project for them to do the cards. Or the local drop-in center had such a rich open studio, and so many people who I had never, I think, made art since they were children were like suddenly coming back to life. And all that's shut down and not likely to, even when they reopen, they're not going to be opening the studio because they want to do like one controllable space at a time. But, and unfortunately, you know, there's alternative ways for a lot of us to stay connected. But so many, you know, one of the side effects of severe mental illness is often poverty, don't have internet, don't have computers, or even in their apartment buildings, they're not allowed to go use the computers in the public rooms and stuff, so can't zoom into a lot of the cool things. But I thought the idea of our drop-in's called PEN, Peer Empowerment Network, having pen pals, or even I push the idea to do drive-by lunches and drive-by picnics. Come pick it up and go eat it in the park or in your house or somewhere. But, you know, to, for one thing, get them food, because a lot of them are afraid to ride buses. But I thought, what if we included something already in the bag, you know, and something as simple as little blank cards, and you know, whether you just put an inspirational quote or a silly selfie, but the idea to get people writing and mailing and staying connected in a hands-on way, you know, is a takeoff of the, you know, not the greeting cards this year, but a version, their own version of the artist cards.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, another aspect of creativity is transforming something mundane into something meaningful, right? You know, so, you know, found object art. And so if people are at home and either they can't afford or they can't get out to go get, you know, art materials, you can transform an empty egg carton into something, you know, and you can use if you have, someone has, you know, dozens of old nail polishes that you thought you were never going to use again, that could become paint, you know, so people can repurpose things. And I think that could be a part of a neat, you know, community art therapy, you know, type, I don't know, presentation or workshop, which is like just like found objects around the home. How can you transform them? You know, so we can go a different direction. I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to chime in if people have other ideas as well. And let us know if you want to you could either by chat in the chat or just verbally, if you have another topic or a question or concern you want to take us in a different direction. We've been talking about this for a while.
I can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned self-preservation, because I'm still on the self-preservation mode, because I cannot do telehealth because I work on an inpatient psych unit that's still actively taking patients. And so I don't know if, I'm not going to belabor the point. I did last time. And I don't know if anybody's on the call now that's interested in that topic or not. But just to let you know, after a whole bunch of us got sick on the unit, at one point, all 3 therapists were out with the virus, and there were absolutely no groups. They showed movies and people slept. So we all did recover, and we all went back to work now with masks. But it went through the, several nurses have had it, techs have had it. And luckily we've all returned to work. I am still struggling with the inconsistencies on the unit. For example, the committed patients are tested before they come on our unit, but the voluntary patients that come up from our ER are not tested. There's no rule that, the newspaper comes every day and it sits around and who knows who touched the newspaper. It's just there, brought in every morning and actually given to everybody in the hospital, as far as I know. At least that's always how it's been. And so we have patients. I have a gentleman who's quite ill. We work with people with serious mental illness. He wears his mask. He wears 2 masks. He wears one up on his bra, up on where his hairline is, and he wears one down around his chin. And then every now and then we have one guy who pulls it off and says, "I need air, I need air, I need air, I need air." So like, this is my little crazy, chaotic unit that I love. I don't know. Is anybody else struggling with this?
Inconsistencies?
Else working in the field where you have to go in and be physically present with people right now?
I'm also a CPS, and I was a little, and serve on the board for the Pennsylvania Peer Support Coalition. I was a little disturbed that the agencies, the therapists are all doing telepsych, but CPSs are still doing in-home. And I'm like, don't CPS lives matter? And in-home, even before the pandemic, a lot of those spaces were not very hygienic, and a lot of those people are not very informed about a lot of health issues and all. And, and CPS work can be done by phone as well, so the fact that the same rules within the same agency, and worse yet, the agencies across the state that are still sending CPSNs are only the ones that are for profit. The other ones pooled all their CVSs and have them doing telepsych. So the rules, in terms of safety and all aren't consistent. And I think some people are a little more perhaps exploited by that, like art therapists, because we're the hands-on kind of thing people, but your health is just as important as those of your clients.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very stressful, Adele. Very stressful. Mindy?
Yeah, I'm not going into my office, but I am doing telehealth, and I am using some art methods, and I'm using them also for my own self-preservation. So I'm a little bit, I don't know what the word is, embarrassed to show you all the wonderful things I've been eating while I'm home. But they're all boxes from various things. I will be going into a graham cracker rehab program when this is over. But I'm eating a lot of stuff, you know, lots of boxes. These are great because you can cut them into 5 by 8 or any size you want, pieces of cardboard, and you can work on the backs of them. So I am a soul collage facilitator and did workshops during the pandemic personally, but I've also been using, these are some of my own cards, so no pictures please, because these are personal. But you choose one background, and generally the rule of thumb is one background and one primary image. And then you can do some writing with that. But they're really easy to make. You can make them on the back of cardboard, and then you can do some writing with them. And clients really like this because generally they can find magazines or books or things at home that they can that they can use. But what I also like about it is that it really gets a narrative going. And it's kind of hard to be resistant to this because it's so easy. If you're getting a newspaper, if you have any leftover magazines, old books that you were going to donate someplace, that you can use that for supplies. Really, all you need is a glue stick, and you don't even really need a scissor. You can actually do ripping. So I've been using this as a primary method because many folks don't have a lot of materials. It's also really great reflectively for me. And the other thing I'm doing is that I've been, I started a new altered book, which was specific to the virus, which is good for me to have a place to put my own responses because clearly this is stressful for anybody. And we need that. We also need that. And I also participate in usually two art making sessions weekly with a friend or a colleague, generally an art therapist, if I can find one. And that's really helpful too. So I think the self-care piece is really important. I don't know how I would manage if I had to go in. I mean, I wouldn't be able to go in. It's just something that I would not be able to do. I'm high risk and older, and quite frankly, I did go for a doctor's appointment the other day to get an injection in my hand, which is the first time I've been out. And this is a medical facility. This is Rothman. And I was double masked. I wore gloves, even though I had to take my gloves off. But I was shocked to see that, they took your temperature and all these things. But I sat in the waiting room and I could see into an office where an office worker was drinking coffee with no mask. So, and quite frankly, I went in to see my doctor and I don't even remember if he had a mask on. I was so distressed by the lack of this one person worker's mask. So I don't know, I have a friend who's also working in a psychiatric facility, and positive, it's an adolescent unit. People with positive results are coming in, and it's either lose your job or come in. So I feel for those of you going in, I'm not sure. I'd probably be triple masked, and I'd wear some type of, there's not a thing I don't find that I'm not repurposing. So this is humorous. But I was taking a blanket out of one of those bags that they put them in. And I thought, this will work out really well for me. The next time I have to go to Rothman, I can see through it. I thought, this is what I'm doing because I'm really getting kind of scared. But the difficulty is trying to balance one's own fear. And I've had, I think at this point, it's 6 clients, not my immediate client, but deaths that my clients have had to deal with. And that is grueling. So, a little bit of humor is great on my own, and having a place to put your own stuff is really important, especially for anybody who's doing any kind of work, and even if you're not doing any kind of work, because we have that message. So save those boxes.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, those are lovely. Thanks for the ideas. So that's
People
great.
in chat like the ideas, yeah.
I use a lot of that cardboard, like cereal boxes, and then I usually make like stencils, like to use for t-shirts and stuff like that. I use cereal boxes are great for that kind of thing. But I wanted to say, like, I think it's really important. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do this a while ago. I think it's definitely important to take care of yourself first, and then, before you can take care of others. And I practically, and I'm not ashamed of it, I practically have a whole team of specialists, you know, therapists, psychiatrists, behavior specialists, and like taking care of like my issues. So I think that's important. That's why, that's the only reason I can like join in now and be able to focus, you know, on other people, like helping them. But I wanted to kind of piggyback on what I think Susan was talking about. I used to do this years ago with some fellow artists in my area. There was like an art show like way back in the day. I think it was like maybe 60s or something. I don't know, but there was this thing called Test the Post Office, and we kind of did something like that. We would mail each other like weird stuff. We did this collaboration that we would mail something to each other. The one, like almost like one of those things like you add to it, you know, like a story or something. Like we would mail something to one person, they would add to it, and then mail it to another person, and then they would kind of add to it. Maybe it's like a group, like collaboration, pen pal kind of thing that somebody can like make something and then mail it to the next person, and they can do something to it, and almost it becomes like a collaboration between a group of people via like the snail mail, so you don't have to like see each other, but you're working on this art piece together.
Yeah, it's like a postal pass the picture.
Yeah.
Taking days and days to work on and complete. That's neat.
Yeah.
We've been toying with the idea of sending out like snail mail packets to our Zoom Open Studio participants and telling them like, don't open it until you show up to the Zoom like art making session, and then everyone opens their packets at the same time and you create something with what you get in your packet. Kind of encourage that, like, hey, we're still in this, you know, together, and we can do this.
Mm-hmm. Cynthia, I'm really glad that you're battling and you're well and with us. And Adele, you
Thank you.
got through your illness and you're with us today. And you guys are real fighters. So way to go. Just, you have my heart and my support in just from what you are dealing with in order to help people, right?
Thank you.
Help yourself.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Any other?
I had a question for Adele. I don't know if you want to answer this here or elsewhere. But since you and your colleagues have all contracted the virus, is your employer considering you immune to that? Or how is that working for you?
I haven't actually seen any research that says once you have had the virus, you actually are immune.
Right.
I am not aware. I mean, in the very beginning, because I got tested positive very early in April. My doctor was then saying, oh, and just think once you're through this, you'll be immune. Well, he didn't say that any other time. So I'm not sure that, no one has said that to me, and I don't consider myself immune because there's really not any, there's so much missing in the treatment of this and in the symptoms of this and all kinds of things that I don't know that they know.
They don't know.
I just wondered, because my understanding was that it can reoccur, or you can get another variant of it or whatever.
Right.
I just would hope that for your sake that that your employers weren't being nonchalant in terms of your suffering and assuming that you were immune in some way.
No, at least like in the very beginning, it was as if we were just this functioning unit on the top floor My cat really wants to be part of this meeting, and he's driving me nuts. Um, that we're just on the top floor, and that we weren't even a part of this problem, and it took me like yelling at people, and I got yelled at back by the psychiatrist, who said to me, social distancing is only for out there, it's not for in here. And I was appalled by this, that everybody can catch it from everybody else. What? It's different because you're inside a hospital building. Mm-hmm. So it took a lot of work to even get people to start thinking about separating tables, separating chairs, trying to, not use the small room ever, just do all the groups in the bigger room. And we weren't offered any masks at all. Now, now we have, now they're taking our temperature, but when I had fevers, I never had a fever first thing in the morning. So they're only capturing a fever at one time in a 24-hour period when a person might have a fever.
Wow.
So they take your temperature when you walk in the door, and if your mask is dirty, they'll give you a new one. Otherwise, your mask is supposed to last like a week. So, that's slightly better than we had in the beginning. But the hospital is having trouble getting sanitizing wipes that aren't bleach wipes. I have to wear real clothes to work. I don't want bleach all over my clothes. So right. The sanitizing wipes were the ones I would go to, but they're having trouble getting those. We wanted to have the patients be able to, clean their hands at the beginning of every meal and every group. Now they can't get they had little individual packs of Purell. Now the nursing director can't even get those. So it's just like it's like a battle. Mm-hmm. And you can't count on that one of the techs did wipe off the chairs or something in between groups or first thing in the morning. It's very haphazard. So I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, Carol. Hey, Adele, did that psychiatrist actually wind up one of the people that got coronavirus?
No, he did not.
That is not just. That is not justice.
He's now wearing he is wearing a mask. And when we do treatment rounds, it's in where I used to do art, but it's too small of a room, but we still do treatment rounds in there because there's fewer people and we separate the tables. So yes, we are using social distancing in treatment rounds. But no, he was not one of the ones to get sick.
Hmm. Adele, are they providing you N95 masks, or are they just providing you surgical masks?
Just surgical masks.
Wow.
Crazy.
I will say that they're, in terms of payment for being out ill, they had 2-week hazard pay that you got paid. And also, then after that, if you're still not well, they will put you on workman's compensation at least. So it's not like you're without pay.
Wow. There's a question, everyone, from Cynthia. Are there going to be minutes sent out from this meeting? And I don't know if we have a secretary taking notes per se, but we absolutely can send out a summary of the key points. I think we also want to invite other people who were not able to join us on this meeting in the art therapy community who might also want to be a part of a task force. So yeah, so we'll summarize some of the key points and send it out. For sure. Mm-hmm.
Because you have like links and all kinds of stuff in the chat. I didn't know if you can include all that in there.
Yep. Absolutely.
I wondered if, I know Rebecca Flack is on the call, and I know she and Adele had some similar situations the last time that we met. So Rebecca, I wanted to know if you wanted to tell us a little bit more about what's happened, or if there are other things that are going on for you.
I know I talked last time a little bit. I guess I'm not sure what's changed since then. We're still using all the protocols that we had before, still wearing masks. We have goggles. Ours are surgical masks also. We don't have the N95s, but we make do. We get a fresh one every day, which is, I'm appreciative for, hearing that other people don't have that. They take our temperatures coming in. We try to have less than 10 people in a room when we're doing groups, and we try to keep patients 3 to 6 feet apart, which can be a challenge, and we try to sanitize everything. I go in the room and I wipe down everything because, as Adele said, I have no idea if techs have done any cleaning in between. So I always sanitize before I go into a room. We do our thing, and then when the group is done, I go through and I have to wipe down everything again. They've been supplying us cleaning supplies, but I hear also that sometimes there's a threat of a shortage of the Clorox wipes. But we have a solution that we also use in a spray bottle that we can dilute, and we just get that through the cleaning, the housekeeping staff. So we have that. So we're making do, but you know, it's a process. It's very labor intensive just to try to keep up with the cleaning aspect and to remember, oh, did I bring the hand sanitizer? Oh, did I bring, you know, there's so much to remember to bring, and there's so much added to just the daily responsibilities that you'd have to do anyway. So it's been stressful. We are adapting, but it's very different than how it used to be. But we're just trying to make the best of it.
Great. Sorry, I was muted. Thanks for sharing your update, Rebecca.
Yeah. And wonder if you and Adele, actually, if anyone, if your clients, people you're continuing to see, are communicating more, issues that are exacerbated by being at home, nonstop with family members, where maybe there's more conflict. People can't, one of the benefits of going to work or school is people get a break from one another, but everyone's on top of each other 24/7. So what are you all hearing? Any themes or patterns that are emerging in your clients?
Well, one of the things that's come up for me is the inappropriateness at times of where the client wants to have the telehealth session. So there'll be times where, the person they check into my waiting room online and they're in bed. And I'm like, oh, where are you? I mean, I know damn well they're in their beds, and I'll say, well, do you think maybe you could sit up, or can we move to a room where there's an art, a potential desk so we can make some art? No, I'm fine, and so that's been a bit of a struggle, just trying to, and I have it really with 2 clients. Another one cooks, which isn't terrible, but her son will be very close by, and she's often talks in a loud way and he can hear her. So one client I suggested, she had the finances, but I did suggest that she get a sound machine. That if we're going to continue doing this, it would be really important if people have an air cleaner or they have something that makes some noise, to have that outside the room. But confidentiality is important, and I find that I have to really go over those things before we have sessions. And when I first started out doing this, that was a critical issue. So it's ensuring that there's confidentiality, that they can freely speak. It is way more difficult, obviously, with other family members around. So for some people, that's been hard also, and we have to temper what we do. I've had sessions where somebody will be in their car, and I just suggest that they not be driving, but they go in the car because it's the only quiet place they can find. So, that's been a concern. But I find that, I go over those pieces if somebody is not compliant, at least with a routine. And I kind of, use some humor saying, well, you come to the office and, we sit up there, maybe you could sit up, and maybe we could move the therapy out of your bedroom or into another space where, I try to get away from doing therapy while they're in bed because it's not really great. But I have one client that consistently, twice so far, refused to leave her bed, and eventually I got her to sit up, but it was I think less productive. So that's been hard. I have one client who's never late to a therapy session. She signs in like 10 minutes late. You know, so in addition to everything else in the universe, having to now address that as well, and whether that is a transferential issue, are they acting out, what is it about? So I'm finding that I have to pick and choose sometimes and let some things go and just, let them know this is your time and you have, whatever, 35 more minutes or 40 minutes instead of 50, so that they can get on the call a little bit sooner. That'd be great. Yeah, I mean, those have been some of the challenges, but overall, I think, and I don't know, my folks, we're doing less art. I will say that. It's been a lot harder because people will be lazy. They don't want to go get their art materials. And so sometimes I'll text them ahead of time, we're going to make art today, have some materials ready, that kind of a thing. And, they may or they may not. Sometimes in the beginning of the session, I'll bring something up in such a way and say, well, what does that look like? Hey, do you have any crayons nearby? And get them to sort of translate that way. It's always helpful. The other thing I've had people do, I've been using Doxy.me, so I don't have the shared screen. It's also been hard because some people are working on a laptop and I can't see them making art. I can see them like here, but not everybody has an apparatus to kind of hang a phone above their head or whatever it is. So that's been hard. I've asked people if they wouldn't mind to send the picture so I can look at it on my laptop while they describe it, because it's difficult when they're holding it in front of them. I then miss the body responses and the facial features and all that. So that's been, different. But overall, I mean, I'm going to get my certification in this because I think it's great. I'm just going to get the certification just because, even though we don't necessarily need it. But I think this may continue and, it delays retirement by like 10 years, I think. So, there's some interesting challenges. I will say that I am going to start doing some pre and post, some testing. I think, some self-reports or even some testing where like the DES, the dissociative experience scale for some folks, I am sensing more dissociation and maybe having people fill that out, because I think that would be really helpful, and also some other measures where perhaps I can assess how helpful this is. So one person, I forget which clinical call group I was on with, but there've been a couple, I think it was Rogers Behavioral Health. They did a seminar last Thursday, and they're doing another one this week on free, and you get CEs for it. But it's just interesting on dealing with dissociation and trauma during the pandemic. And I really just kind of wanted to see what they were going to say. But there were actually some really good links there, and you can access that on their website. If I can find it in here, I'll type it in. It's somewhere on this messy desk. But it was through Rogers Behavioral Health. And they're doing a lot of some assessments. And so far, their research is showing, we've only been in this for a couple of months, that people seem to feel very positive, clients, about the telehealth, and that there is often more disclosing because of the barrier in between. People maybe feel safer. So I think it'll be interesting to do maybe some monitoring of what we're seeing for those of us that are doing telehealth exclusively. So some challenges and some gains, but for me right now, it's my only option. So I'm not ready to go into either office.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mindy, could you speak more to the certification you mentioned?
Yes, there is. I'm looking on my computer to see if it's not here right now. But there is a group that it's a telehealth. You can become, I think it's a board certified telehealth therapist. And I think you have to have a license in something else already. And they named 2 sites that they will allow you to get trained from in order to then apply. So I can look it up and type it in while we're talking because it's not on my computer. But I think it's about $350 or something, and you can get a certificate, and that can be used towards this other one, which you then have to do some other things for. But I think that even though that is not required now, I think most probably that this now it's taking off. Telehealth is taking off, and many, many people are recognizing the value of potentially doing it this way rather than having an office. I had vowed, one of my clients is a therapist who was getting certified, and I said, I will never do telehealth. The person must be in the office, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then this happened. So I've been surprised at, you know, some of the interesting things that happened with it, and my not having to commute an hour and 15 minutes each way to one of my offices. And although I'm still paying rent on 2 offices, but I did condense my Jersey office. I brought somebody else in with me. So I'm only gonna, when this ends, I'll go in once a week, and the other day I'm gonna do telehealth because I'm trying to cut back my rent because I don't think I'm going anywhere soon. So that's been an issue. But I'll type it into the chat. I'll look for it now. Again, it's not required, but I wonder what will happen. As of June 6th, insurers are saying, well, at least Aetna, saying that they're going to, right now they're waiving all co-pays, and that also makes it interesting for clients because they're paying the full amount to the clinician. So there's no cost to the client other than showing up, which is really great. Come June 6th, I don't know what's gonna happen, but my guess is it's going to get extended. And when it gets extended, I think the rules and regs are gonna shift, which they probably should, so that people know about ethics and they know about other things. Like I'm looking at myself here, and I have a photo of a friend of mine and I up there. I think we were a little inebriated. It was my 40th birthday. That will not be here, you know, so I normally don't even do my sessions in here. So, but there are things I think we do need to be mindful of in doing telehealth. So I'll type it in the chat area.
Great. Yeah, that's helpful. I'm curious about that. I wonder if it would then also then apply to seeing clients in other states if you had that certification, if it would end up being national.
Right. I'll check it out.
Thanks.
I don't know. Did anybody see the, Kathy Malchiotti was promoting this. She's one of the presenters. It's happening at the end of the month, and it's a 3-day seminar, I guess. And it's Bessel van der Kolk's yearly trauma, but this year it's the trauma in the age of coronavirus. And it looks really interesting, but I just thought it would be, I don't know how many CECs we could get because Kathy's the only art therapist, but there's, I think, 20 available. But just the topic seems interesting.
I saw that, which I'm up for recertification this year, which I'm debating, and it's been such a rough 2 years. Plus, the Credentials Board hasn't been answering emails for like a month or so, so I'm sort of stuck in terms of some questions. But I did see Bessel, though, the Daryl Hammond documentary, Cracked Up, that came out. They had not one, but 2 live discussions of it afterwards, and Bessel was part of the panel, which was so nice to see both clinicians and consumers having a conversation together. And Bessel very much kind of, you know, Daryl was sort of very humble in that, well, you know, let them answer that. And he's like, no, who do you think taught us? You know, you, the clients, are the ones that taught us what people need and all. But they're actually ongoing. They're having another one, at least our time, it was 5 o'clock Wednesdays. And a really very open, forthright discussion. Each week, it kind of takes a different topic from the documentary. I think suicide related to early childhood trauma was this past Wednesday. But it's been a really worthwhile, you know, just a 1-hour chat. I had rushed through to see the documentary real quick because it was on the same day as the first live talk, and I was doing 6 things at once. So I really want to sit and when I can really watch it further. A good friend of mine from years ago who has a horrible trauma history, she watched it, and then we were talking, and she said, did you learn anything new? And then I said, not really, but I said, I think the documentary will so encourage other people to have the conversation and start talking about that itself. And, you know, I was never a Daryl Hammond fan back in, you know, his heyday. And I'm such a fan now because, not just his story, but there's so much more to him as a person and what he was doing at the time that he was kind of in his prime and dealing with was like, how in the world, you know, which says a lot about the ability to have contributions and talents even in the middle of your sickness, you know. And he has such humility, especially for a celebrity. You know, I sort of hate some of the mental health celebrities out there that, you know, get $12,000 and give the same speech and tell the same jokes all over the country everywhere. And it's interesting that he's still very humble and learning. And even talking about this week, I needed just somebody to come sit with me, you know, not even to talk to me. And I didn't want to text. I just wanted somebody physically to sit with me in a room. And about, you know, he had a wonderful quote about, you know, it wasn't a government or a pill, it was a human being that helped. And about, you know, even Bessel said, you know, help comes in different ways and it's not always the professionals, you know, and to be able to talk about the mistakes, you know, which I know even in my own experience, I said, you know, it's not to blame or guilt people, it's so that we can all do better, you know, including myself. So. But it's one, you know, I've sat through some Zoom things that were kind of like torture or disappointing or no-shows. And that one, it was definitely an hour. And I don't know how many Wednesdays they're going to keep it going, but yeah. It was a really worthwhile hour.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Everyone, I'm just being mindful of the time. It's 3:28, and it's been a great conversation. And so we should head towards wrapping up. If anyone has any final thoughts or comments, if we want to sum anything up, now would be a great time. And as I said, I'll jot down key points and takeaways from the meeting and send it out to you and the our therapy community. Any last thoughts or comments as we prepare to end our meeting?
You know, the one thing I worry about, I mean, so many people, including myself, are just eager to, let's be done with this, you know? And I think it's right now until, you know, something changes, it's like having a chronic illness and, you know, getting that prognosis is awful. But I think the sense of needing to prepare people that, you know, until there's a vaccine or you know, something else, it's going to be about managing things. And while we'd all like life to go back to normal, that to prepare people for the long term, which is unknown, but that rather than, oh, you know, it all looks good now and Boscov's is open, you know, and that kind of thing. So, and that's a hard thing to tell people when they're just like, I just want to be done already. When's this over? And nobody knows that, but, you know, the idea of, you know, helping people prepare not just to get through 2 months, but, you know, that we don't know, but in many ways, how you deal with chronic illness. Yeah, you might get better, but then you can relapse and, you know, the country might be looking at a relapse. We don't know a lot.
Right.
So
yeah,
this is realistic preparation for, you know, this is, you know, going to be a very, you know, unknown kind of situation. And in the meantime, you know, you know, to be prepared for that in a hopeful way and find the good part. Even my nutritionist always is like, you know, what are 2 silver linings you found today in the middle of a pandemic? And not, you know, I wrote a piece called Negative Easter. And then it turned into Best Easter Ever. And it was funny how that happened when I least expected it, when you began to take things away and see other things, you know, that are there when you're stripped. So.
Yeah. So, right. It'll be an ongoing process until everyone has access to a vaccine. And then we can finally kiss this goodbye. So it's going to be a while. Anyway, very good. Everyone, thanks for joining us. Stay safe. We'll arrange another meeting in a couple weeks. Another opportunity to connect.
Oh, that Cracked Up, it is on Netflix now if anybody wants to check it out. It was to have local screenings free in theaters, but because of the virus, all that was canceled, but you can catch it on Netflix.
Okay. Well, what's it called?
Cracked Up. There's a couple movies with very close titles, but it's the Daryl Hammond documentary.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Susan.
Right. And then we'll be reaching out about the task force so we can continue to talk about that.
Absolutely. All right, friends, we're going to sign off. Have a great rest of the weekend. Be safe.
You too. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you
for joining.